Your average moviegoer is heading to the theaters for the biggest stars, the freshest directors, and the hottest movies. When the Hollywood hype machine stops, there's a whole world of incredible films just waiting for an audience. These are the most underappreciated movies of 2013. First up at number 8, Escape from Tomorrow. It's the story of a family's trip to Disneyland gone very, very wrong, and it's rife with insanity like cat flu, robot interrogation, prostitutes, and some serious paranoia. But that's not even why Escape from Tomorrow is on the list. The coolest thing about this film has almost nothing to do with what ended up on the screen, but more to do with how Escape from Tomorrow was shot almost entirely in Disney World. And not by the grace of Walt Disney either. It was completely undercover. No permission, no permits, no special access, just pure guerrilla filmmaking. The crew smuggled equipment and posed as tourists, and even varied their facial hair, all in the name of this very strange, very ballsy little movie. The film is pretty weird, and not exactly in a good way, because the acting's a bit stilted and the plot does get lost, but as far as stunts go, the cast and crew of Escape from Tomorrow pulled one over on Mickey Mouse himself, and that deserves some serious appreciation.
What's wrong with me? I just want to connect. Why can't I connect with people? Oh, right. It's because I'm dead.
At number 7, Warm Bodies. It seems like this film fell off the map as soon as it arrived. Financially, Warm Bodies certainly did well, but where a decade ago fellow horror comedy flick Shaun of the Dead firmly entrenched itself in the classic zombie canon, Warm Bodies seems to have only passed through. At a time where zombie films seem to be all the rage, surprisingly little was said about Warm Bodies, which is a shame because it's really pretty good. It's got a fresh twist on the genre, a cool addition to the zombie lore, and a cute love story that you'll smack yourself for not picking up on earlier. The problem is that much like vampire movies from a few years ago, zombies are pretty played out. What started out with 28 Days Later as a cool, modern revival of the genre turned into a few badass blockbusters, a couple TV shows, and a lot of video games. But soon, every producer and their mom was making yet another zombie movie, and they got collectively worse. So when a genuinely worthwhile addition came out, it just got lost amidst the noise. Hopefully when the craze calms down and the cult classics rise from the wreckage of the zombie movie decade, Warm Bodies is somewhere on the list. Next up, Blue Caprice. Blue Caprice is a slow burn. Based on the true story of the Beltway sniper, not too far gone from recent memory, the film is small, quiet, and reserved. And very little of the film is dedicated to the shootings themselves. When they do come, they are far from blazing gun battles. They're an intimate affair between a sniper and a victim, between father and son. And there's a cool, deep chemistry to that relationship. No one is showing off here. Unfortunately, the box office numbers weren't either. To Blue Caprice's credit, no one should have expected much at all. None of the actors even remotely resembled a star in the celebrity sense, and let's face it, if you don't have a DiCaprio, De Niro, or Denzel, you're not filling seats. However, we do think this one might be worth a look back. It's a Sundance Select that tackles a powerful subject in a mature way that you won't usually find in your average popcorn flick or Marvel mega franchise movie, because you're definitely not going to find a cute teaser for a sequel here if you wait for the credits to roll.
I know you know where they are.
Checking in at number 5, the heavyweight, Prisoners. It would be a lie to say that Prisoners didn't get any attention. With an A-list ensemble, a strong advertising push, and a solid opening weekend, Prisoners seemed to be on the right track, and it deserved to be. Villeneuve kept tension cranked to 11 while Jackman and Gyllenhaal took brilliant acting to some dark places amid some serious ethical dilemmas. It was the feel-bad movie of the year in the best kind of way. This late-year, philosophically minded, complex drama seemed to have Oscar bait written all over it. But the Globes came and went without a single mention, and the Oscars only nominated it for its cinematography. So what happened? Gravity happened. 2 weeks after Prisoners opened and Gravity flew across the screens like an untethered Sandra Bullock, love it or hate it, Gravity got a ton of press and really kicked off the Oscar talk of 2013. It's been an exceptionally strong year, and unfortunately, audiences and voters have short memories. While Prisoners was never going to be a big winner, it seems like it missed the boat on even being part of the conversation.
In a world.
Hey, make sure your phone's turned off. I think we're getting some feedback out here.
Oh. Sorry, duh.
Ready.
Number 4, In a World. Adored by critics and seen by almost no one, In a World isn't underappreciated so much as unknown. With it, Lake Bell breaks out of her typical rom-com supporting role and tries something a little more independent on for size, which seemed to work pretty well for another former rom-com stud this year. Bell writes, directs, and stars in this charming and hilarious heartwarmer. The chemistry is spot on, and what look like caricatures turn out to be three-dimensional characters, and there's a refreshing twist on the typical ride-off into the sunset perfection of Hollywood endings. This kind of success from Lake Bell means it's likely we'll see another financier taking a bigger risk on her in the future. And with any luck, her next movie will get the appreciation it deserves.
Tell me the story of us.
Again?
Closing in at number 3, Frances Ha. Right from the beginning, audiences are bound to fall in love with Greta Gerwig as Frances Ha, but not necessarily in the same way that they're falling in love with Jennifer Lawrence or Scarlett Johansson. Greta absolutely radiates charisma, and it's hard not to smile when she blunders across the screen trying to figure out her place in life. The film's modest success and Gerwig's Golden Globe nomination are a testament to that charm. Any audience put in front of this film is bound to come out satisfied. The problem is that not quite enough filled the seats. Depending on your affinity for New York indie films, you may know filmmaker Noah Baumbach from The Squid and the Whale. With a solid writing and directing track record, it seems like he should have broken out of his niche by now, but the truth is, his type of filmmaking has limited commercial appeal. His films meander about, they've historically had an uncomfortable edge to them, and the endings are far from what you would call satisfying. Fortunately, he's at his most accessible with Frances Ha. He directs with a light touch and keeps the film clipping along at an engaging pace, even with its distractions. If you haven't seen Frances Ha yet, don't pay attention to the lack of hype. This one is more than worth a watch.
Do you live around here, Sutter?
How do you know my name?
You go to the same school. I'm Amy.
That's what I was gonna say. Nice to meet you, Amy.
At number 2, Spectacular Now. Blink and you missed it, but The Spectacular Now was one of the best indies of the year. It perfectly captured the almost summer feeling of freedom that comes with the end of the school year, and the anxiety that comes with knowing it's all going to be over soon. But James Ponsolt's sublime coming-of-age story is also a portrait of alcoholism and codependence. And it doesn't spare you the messy details. These characters hurt each other, and they hurt themselves. But they're not mean people. They're lost, and they're easy to root for and love. They're played with subtle vulnerability by Miles Teller and Shailene Woodley, who both got launched from relative obscurity into the mainstream as a result, with big 2014 projects like Divergent and That Awkward Moment due out this year. In what is quickly becoming an overarching theme of these underrated films, The Spectacular Now suffers from the same problem as most of the other indie films on this list, a lack of recognizable celebrities. The most important factor in putting crowds in theaters today is the name on the marquee. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, but at some point we have to ask ourselves, are we going to the theater for a good story or to catch up with a familiar superstar?
Slow this down a little bit. Y'all ain't got no rhythm, man. Mace, I love you like a brother, but I gotta say that when it come to being discreet, you're a disgrace. I mean, you think we all don't know about him and Grace on the low, undercover trying to date.
And finally, number 1, Short Term 12. With an astounding 99% fresh rating on Rotten Tomatoes, Short Term 12 is certainly a critic's darling. Heralded as touching, compassionate, moving, and heartbreaking, Short Term 12 is a character piece so rich with real humans that it sometimes feels like a documentary. Brie Larson mixes toughness with vulnerability in a way that feels brutally honest and complex, where it could have easily slipped into two-faced caricature. She is the perfect response to a decade of manic pixie dream girls and their random quirks. And then there's Keith Stanfield, who breaks out in a big way. If there was nothing else, this film would be worth a watch just for him. But there is an entire near-perfect ensemble cast. It's one of a kind and should be considered a can't-miss for anyone. But a lot of people did miss it. After winning 2013 South by Southwest, Short Term 12 went on to an extremely limited theatrical release. But that's okay. The film recouped its small budget, which means it's very likely you'll be seeing bigger and better advertised projects from these actors and filmmakers very soon, which is a good thing, because it's a rare film that puts together a touching storyline, true-to-life characters, and a sense of compassion and humanity like Short Term 12, which is why we think it's the most underappreciated movie of 2013. What about you? Were there any films from last year that didn't get the attention you think they deserved? Do you find some of these films to be wildly overhyped? Well, let us know in the comments below and subscribe to Cinefix for more IndieWire movie lists.